You're watching France 24. Welcome to our special coverage from the World Economic Forum in Davos. My name is Markus Karlsson. Today I'm sitting down with a man who was named Europe's best finance minister in 2011 by the Financial Times. Anders Borg is the finance minister of Sweden, a country that's been held up as a model of frugality and budget discipline in Europe. But even in Sweden, the dark clouds are gathering on the horizon, and most of them come from the eurozone debt crisis. Anders Borg, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, how worried are you at this stage about the state of the Swedish economy, seeing the threats that seem to be rolling in, at least, from the eurozone?
Well, no doubt we are seeing the debt storm also coming to Sweden, but I do see here from Davos also some very positive signs. We are seeing that Italy and Spain are being much clearer and more outspoken about their problem, and obviously the new governments also are signaling that they are willing to do something. And I also have the impression, speaking to the business leader, particularly those that are more heavily oriented towards the US economy, that they are seeing a recovery. So yes, there are very problematic situation for us, the political situation in Europe, but we also see some positive signs coming out of these Davos meetings, I think.
Are you confident then that Eurozone leaders are taking the right steps or are going in the right direction to resolve this crisis?
Well, I think we must accept that this will take some time. We will have a heads meeting on Monday. To my mind, it looks very likely that we will have an agreement on the fiscal compact. The most likely outcome today is that we will have even 25 or 26 countries signing up to the new treaty, which is a good step forward. We're clearly also seeing that the PSI discussions on Greece are moving forward. Could we put an end to that discussion and come to some conclusion? That would be a positive sign. So yeah, I think we are moving forward, but obviously we're still in the woods. We are not out of the woods yet.
Now, the European Union's Economics Commissioner, Olli Rehn, he said here in Davos that the next few days will be crucial in the lead up to the EU summit that you just referred to there. Now, that's a message that we've heard before, and there's a lot of impatience, shall we call it that, in the markets, for instance, that we do need to see this stopped at some point.
Well, obviously there's some impatience, but let's also be fair. I mean, the bond yield in Italy is now coming below 6%, and it was hovering around 7% just a couple of weeks ago. So there is also a realization in the market that the countries are starting to move forward. And yes, we have further mountains to climb. It's clear that the EFSF ESM has to be strengthened. It's clear that the ECB must uphold a very flexible position towards helping out in the markets. It's clear that we are not already clear with the IMF loans, but that will also have to come in the weeks ahead of us.
Now, you're not a member of the Eurozone yourself. Sweden is not a member of the Eurozone, but you are a member of the European Union. What kind of influence can you have in these negotiations of what actually happens inside the Eurozone? This at a time, for instance, you talked about the European Stability Mechanism. France has made it clear that it wants to see the lending capacity of the ESM go up, whereas Germany is not so keen on that idea. So we're seeing clear divisions here.
Well, I tend to be on this question, be a little bit closer to the French line than the German line. I think it's good that we have established that the ECB can be active. And I also think that we eventually, at the end of the day, must create a political situation where Germany is ready to move. I can understand their argument. There is no point of throwing money that is going to be wasted in efficiency, in bureaucracy, and might even be lost in corruption in some of these countries. So strict conditionality must be upheld. And it's quite clear that the Greeks have not done what they should when it comes to implementation of these measures. So I can see why the Germans are reluctant, but at the end of the day, all of the countries will have to move forward, because otherwise there will be no solution.
So the Germans, they're just going to have to get over themselves, and they're going to have to put that money on the table.
Well, I mean, we should also respect their argument. It's quite clear that we've seen, particularly in the North European countries, a right-wing populistic reaction to the discussions on Greece and the fact that the taxpayers in Finland and Netherlands and Germany is paying a lot of money. And I understand, therefore, that they need to balance this so that we don't put fuel on the right-wing populist reaction. But at the end of the day, Europe is moving forward. Not fast enough, We are many countries, different traditions. We are political democracy, so you need to anchor this among the voters. But I think Europe is starting to move in the right direction.
What will Sweden do to help ring-fence the eurozone debt crisis?
Well, we've said that we are ready to do a substantial deal on the IMF. We have said that we are ready to go up to twice our quota. We are the only country who have said that. And
put money into this special fund set up by the IMF
to
for the eurozone.
Yes, provides. We've said up to 11 billion euros we are ready to provide to help out with the IMF. But obviously, depending on the fact that others will contribute, we must see particularly all of the euro countries, but also all of all of the other EU states contributing, and eventually also the Chinese, the Mexicans, and others that are likely to be financiers here.
Now, you spoke there earlier about divisions within the European Union, and the Swedish attitude, for instance, seems very, very different from the British attitude. Britain has made it clear that it will not sign this new fiscal compact. It will not put up more money into this fund set up by the IMF to ring-fence the eurozone crisis. What do you say about the British and their attitude?
Well, I think there has been a very strong reactions after the heads meeting the 9th of December from the pre-ins. There is a pro-European cooperative strategy for countries that doesn't have the euro. The Swedes, the Danes, the Poles want to be good Europeans. We do not want to be perceived as...
But the British don't want to be good Europeans, is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, they have their position, but it's very important for us that the union is functioning, that it is a union, that we can prevent it from getting too much divided. So the other pre-ins are pro-Europeans. We are not Eurosceptics, and it has, after the 9th of December, become more important for us to underline that.
Now, Sweden, as I said in the introduction, has been held up as a country to emulate. After the financial crisis, Swedish growth rates, for instance, have been very, very high indeed. What can the Eurozone countries do, as I say, to emulate those growth rates?
Well, I mean, we've seen some 4 or 5% growth after the crisis, somewhat stronger than Germany and some of the other European countries, but also very strong employment growth. And I do think that this is due to the fact that we were very active with structural reforms in 2007, 2008, before the crisis. So we've tried to modernize our welfare system to reinforce the participation on the labor force. And that's obviously one of the lessons that Europe has to eventually face. If we look at Italy, they have below 60% of the workforce in actually working, and that cannot sustain a well-functioning welfare state in the long run.
Now, here in Davos, when you speak to business leaders and other politicians, they're holding up this Nordic model. What do you say about that? That the Nordic model is so esteemed?
Well, I mean, we've been able to combine very limited economic division, a high degree of egalitarian society, high degree of social mobility, while at the same time showing high degree of productivity growth and strong demand. So yes, we've been able, at least over the last few years, to perform quite well. But let's remember, that is because we came out of the crisis in the early 90s. We learned this lesson. We were standing against the wall and facing no alternative to start to get our economy in order. And I do think that is also what could happen to some of some of the countries like Italy and Spain, that they now are starting to deal with problems that has been pretty evident for the last 1 or 2 decades.
I want to get personal just for a moment. Now, not only is Sweden being held up as a model to emulate, you are also being held up as a model to emulate. You were named the European Finance Minister of the Year by the Financial Times. What are you doing right that your colleagues should emulate?
Well, I mean, fiscal policy is teamwork. We have a structure in Sweden where the parliament and the government are very much oriented towards a responsible fiscal policy. So I've done a little part of it, but this is a teamwork and not you're not graded as an individual, you're graded as a country, and I think that's how one should see it.
But of course, in the media, there's a lot of buzz about the fact that you have a ponytail, you have an earring. What do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, it's a very strong signal that I will never accept a haircut on the Swedish debt.
All right. And how have you been received then by your fellow European colleagues after that nomination, after that naming?
You know, we have a very close cooperation. We tend to meet almost every month or even every second week among the finance ministers. So this is a very intensive collegial work, and we have very good relationships with all of these, with all of my colleagues. Mr. Baron, for example, I think is now playing an excellent role in the council to facilitate compromises and moving forward. So this is a very close cooperation, which is one of the essential, very important also for solving problems for Europe.
Just to throw it back a little bit, in the next few days, we were talking about the EU summit before. What exactly are you expecting to get out of it here towards the end?
Well, I think we will see a treaty. There are some compromises that has to be struck among the heads. Big principal issues such as how we're going to deal with the debt and how we're going to deal with the participation of the non-euro countries. But I think the heads are in a good position to deal with those questions. So to my mind, that could be a stepping stone towards moving forward for a solution.
All right, Anders Borg, thanks very much indeed. Tack så mycket. And with that, we're going to wrap up the program. Thanks for watching France 24.